Happy International Women's Day. I am so lucky to be featuring on another speaker spotlight Dr. Jacquelyn Ford Morie, founder and chief scientist at All These Worlds LLC. Dr. Jacquelyn, so good to see you today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Nathan.
Oh my goodness. I have been waiting for this conversation all week. Can you please introduce yourself and what you do in spatial computing?
I have that company that you mentioned, All These Worlds, which I started about 15 years ago. And that is to bring more diversity and more meaningful experiences to, as you say, spatial computing, or as I like to say, virtual reality experiences. So that's what that company does. I've been in this world for quite a long time. I got my start in virtual reality in 1989. I was very lucky to find a position at the Institute for Simulation and Training in Orlando, Florida. I worked at the Visual Systems Lab there, where I was working with Army research scientists Whitmer and Singer, who developed the presence questionnaire that was used for so many years. And we were doing very basic perceptual studies in virtual reality. For example, we put eye charts in these virtual worlds and saw what kind of visual acuity you had with the headsets of the day. Now, you can imagine the headsets of 1989, 1990, you did not have much. In fact, you were legally blind, as we proved by what you could get off of those eye charts in those headsets. You could do better with color recognition. We did recognition of people coming at you down a hallway. We did a lot of wayfinding studies. And that was my daytime work. But my nighttime work was trying to take these machines, these systems we had, to make them so that they could provide emotional responses in the people that were in them. I found most of the work was super boring. You could fly around an empty town on the biggest machine that you could buy that of that time. But what was there when you got there? You felt like you were in this town, but it was an empty space. It had nothing in it. So that set me on a career to make spaces that had something that spoke to us as human beings.
You mentioned your start was back in like 1989. One of my favorite questions to ask people is about what was that moment that changed their mind or got them excited about VR? What was your XR origin story?
So I've always considered myself an artist first and a scientist second. And to me, they're both two sides of the same coin. But the artistry is something that I was doing since I was a teenager. In the 1980s, I was making these physical assemblages, and these were things that I would put together, but they were actually environments I wanted to bring people into. I was also working in computer graphics at the time, both in 3D modeling and in animation. So I decided I would build the 3D worlds and then show them as stereo slides so that you could actually feel like the world was somewhat around you. And then came VR. And I went, here's my medium. This is my medium. And so I found myself a job at a VR lab and started building the kinds of worlds that I wanted to put people in. And most of them had an emotional component. They were very artistic and they were very strange for what we were building at the time. But each of these worlds evoked a different emotional response in people. And I saw that it worked. I saw that the techniques we were using could actually wrap someone around this in this space and make them feel like they were having an experience that was very meaningful.
The connection of art and science and technology all pointing back to how do we build emotional connections. What an amazing start. How many AWE events have you attended and what keeps you coming back year after year?
I think I have been to 10 awe events. I may have that number a little wrong, but I know in my memories on Facebook today, it came up that we were deep in production for an augmented reality company, which we did launch at AWE 8 years ago. So I know I've been going that long, and I know I'd been before that. So that was an amazing year for us. Sadly, the company didn't survive, but every year I love going to AWE because it's like a technology Christmas. You see these brightly wrapped packages all over, and you don't know what's in them till you go to that panel or you talk to that person or you go to that booth. And when you open it, it could be the best surprise ever. And you never quite know what you're going to get, but there's always something. There's wonderful takeaways from going to AWE. And I always learn so much. And I like to share too. So it is this wonderful two-way communication. And just like I said, technology Christmas.
Amazing. And you sort of led right into the next question. You mentioned this give and take of connecting with folks at the conference. Who should come to your talk, and what are you excited to share more about from the stage at AWE this year?
I'm excited that AWE this year is recognizing much of the history that has led to where we are today in this industry. And it's a special interest of mine to showcase people who have been involved in some of the main new concepts over the last 30 years. Lots of those stories are not known. And I've been working on a 2-volume history of VR from the early days to where it's going in the future. And I'm going to be sharing some of those stories of these people who helped create the very beginnings of the XR industry, and people you may not have heard of and people whose stories you've never heard. So I'm hoping to share some of that and really shine a spotlight on people who need to be recognized for their contributions.
I'm sure there are going to be many people who are excited to come and hear that. In doing some of the research, that I've been doing, looking at the history of XR this year, one of the things that I noticed is that there is a cliff that we fall off in anything that is like pre-internet are, that's locked away in books and journals and more traditional media is not always as accessible or widely known on the web. What a great resource to have two volumes to help us catch up.
And it's actually really wonderful. People are starting to recognize the value of this history, and they are combing through their own archives and sharing them on the internet. And I'm certainly doing it. That's what I've been doing in my spare time here, is putting my history up on the internet. It's so much easier to find this stuff now. I started that
Mhm.
VR history book 10 years ago, and it was really pulling teeth to find those stories. And now I can get to almost anybody because everybody has a presence on the web, and people will gladly pull out their archives because it's something worth sharing, and we all need to know these stories.
So, on the other side, what are you hoping to learn at AWE? What questions are you bringing to ask others at the conference?
One of the things that I really want to focus on for the next few years, maybe for the rest of my life, is bringing other senses into these immersive experiences. We are very limited by sticking with visuals. It's not the number of pixels, it's how it affects us as human beings. We have a little bit of haptics, we have sound, we have visuals, we have very little in the way of scent, and we have very little of what some experts say are the 55 senses that we as human beings have. I would like to find ways to bring many of those new senses into these immersive experiences. For example, some years ago in a project I was working on, I created an infrasonic floor. And the infrasonic floor played frequencies below the level of hearing, so between 4 and 20 hertz. So you never heard them, but your body felt them and your body responded to them. Now, we didn't play them at high decibels, so they weren't dangerous. But what we were able to do with that infrasonic floor was create an emotional score. So when we were playing those low frequencies, there was a bit of a sense of unease. And when we stopped those frequencies, you felt more relaxed. So we were able to maximize that to create better emotional response from participant. The other thing that I've been working on for over 20 years now is bringing sense into these immersive experiences in a very safe way. You don't want to spray anybody with these dangerous chemicals that constitute most scents. So we've developed a way with a wearable scent collar that is very safe. It doesn't spray anything at you. It just drifts molecules up towards your nose. And we've been showing that for a while. We are now in about the fifth version, and we're hoping that sometime this year we can bring that version to developers and get it out there finally.
Amazing. Everything from the history of XR to the accessibility and full scent immersion of emotional experiences. Dr. Jackie, it has been such a treat to talk with you today. I really can't wait to learn more. And thank you so much.
You are so welcome, Nathan, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Oh my goodness.